and
Mhm.
some of it like appealed to me, some of it answered some of my experiences, but there was another thread of how my particular relationship with
Mhm.
energy worked. And I didn't find any books that weren't just about like psychic vampires bad, here's how to protect yourself. So I did that thing that everybody tells you to do. Write the book that you need, write the book that you want. And so, yeah, 94, I started it when I was 19. I wasn't trying to be a new Mary Shelley. I swear it was just that was what I was immersed in at the time. Um, you can definitely see my school influence with the college courses in comparative religious studies, because there's a lot of stuff drawn from the world religions and world theology, and especially a lot of ideas of Hindu pranayama, yoga, and still with like its own spin of this is how I experience the world. I don't know if this is how anybody else experiences the world, but let me put it together and share it and see if it speaks to people. And even if it doesn't speak to you, it's still a window into a particular type of energy work. You got muted.
Muted yourself.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
It happens.
I'm not
And
as good of a lip reader, so.
it's like, no, you know how cats are. They get real close to your keyboard and you're like, oh my gosh, I got to do this before they start doing something.
Mm-hmm.
With
Oh,
three
I
of
know.
them, it goes nuts
Yeah, and
sometimes.
multiple kids in the house. It
But
happens.
you have a question, don't you?
So after like extensive work in your nonfiction, what motivated your shift to urban fantasy with the Shadow Side series?
I had aspired to be a novelist long before I ended up having nonfiction stuff published. It was just the nonfiction stuff needed to be published. Like that was the time where it had to be out. So I,
Mm-hmm.
I actually sidelined my fiction career to focus on the nonfiction, and there was such a demand for it that like I just didn't have time. And I hit a point in my life where I had a window of opportunity to just tell stories.
Mm-hmm.
And the shadow side, it's urban fantasy. Obviously, it's a story, but also one of the things that I love about storytelling is you can take real stuff and weave it into the world building and
Yeah.
sort of go, what if? Like, if
Mhm.
this particular ability were like super turned up, what would that look like? And the shadow side was also a way of me trying to express to people how it feels to do the psychic work that I do, like what it looks like to me. So the main character Zach, when he like moves between like the physical reality and the shadow side, the way I describe the shadow side, the way that there's like these layers of echo and memory and like kind of things remembered in spaces, and
Mhm.
it's sort of lightless and yet you can still see. That's very much how I experience my psychic stuff, like the way it's saturated with emotion.
Cool. Cool.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
I kind of like that because your real life experiences and then intertwining it with
I know.
Well,
Yeah.
the really neat thing was is I got to meet a number of my idols, like the people that I grew up reading who were fiction writers, and at the time I was like, I think this person like actually knows. But
Mhm.
you always think maybe you're reading too much into it, maybe.
Yeah.
But then I got to meet them and find that no, they were practitioners, like channelers and psychics and witches. One I
Mhm.
can call out, Laurel K. Hamilton, who's very open about it. A few I can't.
Yeah.
But finding that fiction is a storytelling is a powerful way of disseminating information and inspiring people, like giving you like this imaginative focus to channel the real abilities, and to put information out there and spark curiosity. When you read a fiction book, knowing that it's fiction, it may talk about something. And if you're made curious about it, you should do more research and see if it's based somewhere. In fact, if there's something that you can learn more, if it speaks deeply to you.
Mhm.
My cousin Nico and I call that rabbit holes that we go down.
I love rabbit
Yeah.
holes.
And then it's hard to get us back out. Do you want to ask the next
You go
question?
ahead.
Just ask what you want.
Okay. She wants me to ask questions then. Okay, so just give me a second here. Okay, so I want to know about your thoughts on the Ouija boards.
Or
'Cause-
like different like divination items. Like I don't know if you use them for like I know you've been on like paranormal investigations or anything. Do you ever like intertwine your craft with your investigations? Like I know a lot of people use like high dollar like equipment and stuff. Like I've always been exposed to the paranormal since I've been a young child, and I've just never used them. I just always used myself.
Mm-hmm.
I think that you're
Yeah.
a powerful tool
It's
and
the
my
same.
own imagination. So
Yeah.
I don't know your views on that.
No, it's the same for me. Like the tech works for some people, but it's not really the stuff that speaks to me.
Mhm.
Mhm.
When I first got involved in paranormal investigation 30 plus years ago, like actually the first group I worked with was the Avalon Foundation out of here in Northeast Ohio,
Yeah.
founded by a fellow named Nick Ryder. And that was 96, 97 maybe. And it was really not common for people to be witchcrafty and
Mhm.
also a paranormal investigator. There was sort of a split between things.
Yeah.
And so I was unusual in the fact that I was bringing all of the tools of magic and witchcraft to paranormal investigation.
Mhm.
And also the attitudes, because although paranormal investigators were aware of Ouija boards, most of their approach with it was sort of informed by the Warrens and the movie The Exorcist, where
Mhm.
Ouija boards are portals to hell, and it's
Yeah.
terrible things are going to happen.
Yeah.
You're going to be possessed, and it's just another tool.
Yeah.
And it's no different than a K2 meter or a pendulum, or honestly just sitting there and inviting the spirits to communicate with you. It's just the PR that it's had, like the stories that have been told about it.
Yeah.
So when I do investigations, um, I encourage people to find whatever tools work for them. But much like you, I am my best sensing device.
Mhm.
Mhm.
It's all me. And in the same way that one should approach a Ouija board or a spirit box with a certain measure of this might work, and also we know that there are levels of fallibility. The same stuff for psychic abilities. Like
Yeah.
Mhm.
a psychic perceptions of a location in a paranormal investigation are only as good as the psychic's objectivity.
Yeah.
And that's actually what you have to learn and hone.
Yeah.
A lot of people think that like the real work is honing the psychic ability, but the real work is learning how to judge what it is you're perceiving and then articulate it in a way where you're not over interpreting or skewing it,
Mhm.
or trying to see things that aren't there because you want them to be there.
I completely understand that. I know someone who a little bit dramatic and thinks that she's seeing things or hearing things that's not there. And I'm like, I've been around spirits since I've been a little girl. And I'm like, you're fine. Trust me. When you have that negative energy in a room with you, it hits you like a brick wall. You know it's there. Sometimes it will try to hide it, but like, I think that's something that I've had to struggle with is what to open myself to and what not to.
Yes. I know for Center Paranormal Teams, um, they sometimes they create their own thought form,
Mm-hmm.
and they assume, oh my gosh, something's here,
Yeah.
or
Well,
a lot
also,
of assumptions too.
I feel like
is
that
what they
happens
do.
with a lot of like children and teenagers with abilities. Sometimes they create thought forms without
Yes.
realizing.
Yes.
Yeah, in working with the paranormal community for as many decades as I have, I'm really thrilled that in the past couple of years, like maybe the past 10 years or so, they've started to actually recognize the idea of thought forms, egregores, the way that we can, in fact, create and construct things that are going to act like spirits, are perceptible like spirits. You can pick them up on all the same machines, but it's a little bit like spirit AI. It's a thing that we've just sort of fed a lot of stuff into, and it will work off of its programming.
Yes.
Every once in a while, they sort of take on a life of their own. I've run into some things that I think started off as thought forms, as constructs, and are
Mhm.
now just genuinely like off there in the world doing their own thing. Those are fascinating. Like really,
that
it
is,
really
I
raises
couldn't.
cool questions about like, what is the nature of being and sentience? Like where does it start? What sparks that?
Mhm. Yeah. I know you was talking about years ago your first paranormal team. So, do you remember that experience you had the very first time? Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, Nick had reached out to me. There used to be an Art Bell discussion group that would meet at like the local Denny's,
Mhm.
and a couple of other places. And they would get together and do like they'd have a guest speaker, and Nick and I crossed paths through that. They had me as a speaker, he was a speaker, yada yada
Mhm.
yada. So he invited me to go to. There's a location in Cleveland called Gray's Armory, and
Mhm.
it's fairly haunted. It's an old like militia. A Cleveland militia was there, like one of the sort of things. And there's a
Mhm.
lot of history to it. And what he wanted to do was basically he was an engineer. So he had his tech, and I had
Mhm.
my psychic stuff. And this was the sort of the first time that we did let's see if the psychic perceptions line up with what the tech is picking up, or can the tech pick up what the psychic is picking up. So like he didn't tell me what was going on with the place. I tried to not research anything about it, and if I was perceiving something, he would start to like move his various gadgets in it, and we compared, and it was
I
pretty
love
cool.
that. That is really cool
Yeah.
That
because it kind of
is.
gives you like, I know as someone, I don't like identify as like anything with like things I've seen and stuff, like if I'm psychic
Mhm.
or medium or anything like that. I just know I've had experiences and that's just where I
Mhm.
go with it. But like it's always nice when you have an experience and then
Yeah.
someone else can say, yes, this is what's happening,
Mhm.
especially because like sometimes you feel so alone in that experience. So I think
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's amazing.
I think you can probably still dig up a very old article from when I spoke at Slippery Rock University where I said, I don't like being called a psychic. Like, this is before Paranormal State, where they're just like,
Mhm.
you're a psychic medium. And I'm like, if that's the word that you're going to have to use, fine, whatever. Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
there was a time with Paranormal State where they're like, well, what do we call you? And I'm like, mystic, shaman. They're like, pick something. And so they picked
Yeah.
for me. But the reason I didn't like that, same thing for you. I think everybody has these abilities. Like everybody has levels of
Mhm.
sensitivity. It's just a matter of how a person, it's what relationship you have with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's your relationship of belief, your relationship of trust, what you grew up with in terms of
Mhm.
what you're
Mhm.
willing to accept, and how comfortable you are exploring them.
Yeah. I feel
Mhm.
like with me, like I'm still like, I feel like with me, I had a lot of experiences as a child and as a teenager that was kind of like traumatic in the paranormal field. So I'm still healing from that because a lot of people don't talk about like
Yeah.
paranormal trauma.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So I'm still healing from that. And I had a really bad experience last year where I had a spirit kind of like obsessed with me and it
Hmm.
was unhealthy.
Yeah.
So now I'm just trying to like, I kind of like blocked myself a little bit, if you know what I
Mm.
mean.
No, that
Especially because I have small
trauma's real.
children.
Yeah.
With Paranormal State, he's only on there a few times on camera, but we actually worked with a psychologist.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that he would do is for families where, especially where young children were having experiences that were just very emotionally upsetting, he
Mm-hmm.
was there to let them talk about that, find a way to process it. I know I used him because I had effectively PTSD from a reading that I did.
Yeah.
So for several readings after that one, every time I closed my eyes, it would just flash back to that one. I put the blindfold on and I couldn't concentrate on where I was
Mm-hmm.
at because they didn't tell me. I mean, that was the whole thing. Like, but it was in Southern Ohio. And 3 weeks before I walked onto this space, a woman had hung herself in the garage.
Oh my
Oh
God.
no.
And they walked me through that.
And you probably felt all of that.
Everything, everything. And what led her to that was, I mean, it was terrible. And the
Mm-hmm.
harder thing is doing a reading for, a lot of hauntings are tied with tragedy and violence and bad things. But when there's decades between you, 100 years between you, it's easier to keep a separation in your
Mhm.
Yeah.
head when you're perceiving it. This was someone who lived in my same state. She was close to my same age. Like all of her feelings, like all of her cultural touchstones, everything was really similar and resonant. So it was very hard to separate her echoes of emotion from myself.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm saying with that is, if you have the opportunity to have an open-minded therapist or counselor where you can talk about it and just like work through it,
Mhm.
like that is legitimately also trauma that
Yeah.
you
Mhm.
need to find some way to work out,
Yeah.
to sort out, and talking about it helps.
I fully agree. Like,
Yeah.
we did shadow work for a discussion in my mom and our family group, and we talked a lot about like paranormal trauma, because a lot of people
Mhm.
just don't talk about it. They just have like an experience and they're done with it. And we're like, we can talk
Yeah.
it through if you're open to it, and if you want to go back to, you know, opening yourself up, you can.
Mhm. Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm really fortunate. I have this amazing therapist who's also an energy worker, and I get premonitions. I get visionary stuff. It definitely inherited
Yeah.
it from my grandmother,
Mhm.
and sometimes that's really hard because it's stuff that you can't stop,
Mhm.
especially the big stuff. And there's always a little bit of guilt that comes with that.
Yeah.
And so
Right.
she's been really, really good for me to just talk it out when there's a dream that, like, because there's a lot going on in the world.
Hmm.
And just being like, but I can't stop it. Like, and realizing that
Yeah.
sometimes you're not supposed to. It's not like the universe is like tapping you to be the chosen one to like go off and do it. Like, you just happen to be
Hmm.
sensitive enough
Mhm.
to pick up that there
Yeah.
are things happening.
You can
Mhm.
relate to that, because she had
Yes.
a dream when she was pregnant with me, and that her
Very vivid.
one of her close friends passed away like the next day, and she knew every detail of it, and she called the mother and be like, hey, is this person okay? And she's like, how do you know everything?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the mother ended up blaming her because she couldn't stop it,
Mm-hmm.
but she's like, I
Yeah.
was sleeping, so there's nothing I could have done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's happened a few
Mhm.
times. When I was pregnant with Amy, almost puppy like every other week it was something
Mhm.
that I will call somebody and says, "Hey, stay away from this," and everything. It was all we can.
And that was when the call dropped. There you go.
There we go.
Right
Think
back.
we're back.
Okay, we're back.
Yeah. So there for a while, everybody was kind of like afraid of me. If I call them up, they're like, "Don't call me. You're going to give me bad news or something." But yeah, it it kind of took a toll on me, just like when I did a reading, and for a person who just thought it was fun and games. And I told them, "Oh, it's not really fun and games." And it came true. And then she blamed me
Mm.
um, of not telling her. And I was like, I did tell you. You just didn't listen. So yeah, it kind of, I mean, it plays a mind game on you, because it's where you don't want to talk to nobody.
Hmm.
You don't want to tell nobody anything because you're too afraid. Um,
Yeah. One of the
I'm
things,
past that now.
yeah, one of the things that stuck with me, my grandmother, my maternal grandmother raised me. She would have been 101 this past Mother's Day.
Oh,
Um,
That's a long way.
we had
yeah.
complicated relationship, but she taught me a lot about my
Mhm.
psychic abilities.
Mhm.
She had premonitions her entire life, and had a very, very fraught relationship with it. The
Mhm.
experience that she had when she was young was, she had a very vivid dream about the death of a family friend, and it was accurate, and it was right around the same time that it happened. And without having any kind of support or like knowledge about how these abilities work, she spent a good portion of her childhood thinking that somehow she had caused it. Not that she was
Mhm.
sensitive to this thing happening, but somehow by having the dream, having the thought that she was responsible,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and like learning to thread that needle of the sense of what is your responsibility? What is your relationship to these events? Are you merely a witness? Are you somehow being tapped to try to interfere? For
Mhm.
me, I think it's just um, you're like a radio tower.
Yeah.
There are
That's
you're
why I call
picking
her
up
a
channel.
lighthouse. Yeah.
Yeah, you're picking up a channel,
Hmm.
and there's nothing more or less than the fact that you just happen to hear that something's going to happen.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And it could just be his spirit saying, "Hey."
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
I've talked to her about too, because
Yeah.
I have children who have abilities, and I had to talk to my child who has a lot of dreams that come true. And like
Mhm.
he announced my whole pregnancy with my last child before I even knew I was pregnant. I'm like, we need to have a discussion about dreams before you announce them to the world.
Yeah. Especially to your teacher.
Yeah, no, it's like learning those boundaries is
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
Like yeah, that was actually the hardest thing for me to learn growing up as a kid because it was all so normal that I just like go blabbing about everything, because that's just what you do. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's psychic kids are an interesting quandary because you have to find some way to never make them feel ashamed of their abilities, like let
Mhm.
them like trust the experience, but also let
Mhm.
them know that it's not necessarily something to share with everybody all the time.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm also teaching them like how to protect themselves because they are
Yeah.
vulnerable because they are small
Yeah,
children, and
Very.
not every spirit has the best intention for you.
yeah, and then you can't just like run up to somebody and be like, hey, I see an angel behind you, like
Yeah.
nobody really wants
Yeah.
to know.
Or my 2-year-old likes to call spirits monsters. I'm like, not every spirit's a monster.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I know I saw YouTube last, I don't know, 8 months maybe ago. He was talking about demons versus negative entities.
Mhm.
Okay, so what is the difference for our audience in case they kind of like, what's she talking about?
Mm. I've got a very strict like checklist for do I call it demonic?
Mhm.
Mhm.
Now the first thing is I don't think demons or the idea of demons predate Christianity and even Judaism. So I don't think that when you say the word demon, when I say the word demon, I'm not talking about Lucifer, wars in heaven,
Right.
fallen angels,
Mhm.
anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about a class of spirits that are very intelligent. They are non-human. They have never been human. It's my
Mm-hmm.
personal belief that they have a difficult time incarnating,
Yeah.
which is why they are more likely to attach themselves to a person in order to try to
Mm-hmm.
experience this world.
Yeah.
And there's two different types or two different ways that they can go. They don't really fit here. They don't fit here well. They don't follow the same rules. So
Mm-hmm.
they're either so alien that what their motivations are and how they interact are just uncanny, just wrong.
Yeah.
And they don't understand the kind of damage that they're doing. And there are some that are just straight up malevolent, like they
Mm-hmm.
really enjoy and feed off of the terror and the fear and the negative emotions of people.
Mm-hmm.
So like that checklist is non-human, hyper intelligent,
Mm-hmm.
and malevolent, or at least like alien and uncanny in a way that does not mesh with our idea of what is good and positive. They have a tendency to gravitate toward people. They're fascinated with people. They
Mm-hmm.
experience the world through us to some extent, which means that they will, there's obsession and possession, where they'll
Mhm.
like kind of overshadow a person, like kind of attach to them and try
Mm-hmm.
to
Do they like
inhibit.
kind of like toy with you?
They can. Um, I've seen some that like the whole goal is like they really just want to have a body, and they can't get it through the old-fashioned means, and so they find a way
Mhm.
to pop around in a person.
Yeah.
Now,
Mm-hmm.
that said, there are classes of spirits that are still called demons, like in the Goetia, the 72 Goetic demons aren't
Mhm.
exactly demons. They
They're
probably
like lower class demons you would consider.
Mm-hmm.
well, actually, digging all the way into the roots of that tradition, they are probably um, the deities assigned to the decans of the zodiac. They're spirits that are written about in really ancient Egyptian stuff. So they are a class of being that eventually became classed as a demon, but they're more tutelary spirits. They're definitely not human. They're definitely very different from us, but they're not necessarily malevolent. They just have a different set of rules. Those are spirits that can be worked with and communicated with, but with great caution, because they are big. They don't understand like how fragile we are. It's sort of like taking a lion into your house and treating it like a house cat. You don't want to do that.
No, I don't. I love cats, but no, thank you.
Yeah.
So that might be cute when this.
No, I don't think there's anything cute about that.
The babies are cute.
No, because last
grow up.
year my cousin Nico, he had a haunted doll, and I do TikTok. Well, I used to do TikTok, and so did he did, and we would have like a paranormal safe space. So I never really do like investigations really anymore, because like I just, with having the past I've had with spirits, I'm just like, I'm good, you know, I dipped my toes in it, I'm okay. So we did a ghost box session, and it turned out the spirit didn't have the best intentions. And what they told, what he was told about the doll wasn't true, and it turned out to be more malicious and wanted to play around, and it didn't care about small children or babies or anything